Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Utah Mining Association's 105th Annual Convention. We appreciate your patience for a few minutes as we're working out some technical issues. This is the first time in our history that we've done a virtual convention, and we're excited to have you all online. We're excited to have a few speakers here with us live, and grateful for the opportunity that we have to do this virtually in lieu of us being able to get together, which we hope to do again next year as normal. So I'm going to start out today and just give a few introductory remarks, and then I'll introduce the other speakers that are going to be presenting here during our general session. Again, I'm Brian Summers. I'm the president of the Utah Mining Association. First off, I want to start and acknowledge the other staff at the Mining Association, Liz Radley and Bren Robinson, who have done so much work to put this on. I also want to acknowledge our board and our executive committee, the officers of the Utah Mining Association, and of course our members that make all of this possible. So to start with, I just wanted to go through a little bit about why this is such a great time to be in the mining industry, and how grateful we should be to be in this industry here in the state of Utah. So one of our presenters is going to be speaking about this a little bit later, but the Utah Geological Survey just released a report a couple of months ago that talked about critical minerals, and they identified that in Utah we have 28 of the 35 critical minerals that are on the Department of Interior's list that have known or economically recoverable reserves. So this is an amazing opportunity, and this is something, critical minerals, that's been getting a lot of attention lately. And to think that, again, 28 of these 35 critical minerals, we know we have economically recoverable reserves. We have historical production of a number of them. We have current production of a couple of them. And we're hoping that in the future, as this becomes something that continues to be on policymakers' radar screen, that we'll be able to exploit these reserves and put Utah really in the critical minerals business in a way that we haven't been for a long time. I want to talk a little bit about the economic contribution that our industry makes to the state of Utah. So in 2019, there were $6.5 billion in extractive production, and the way that this is tracked, this is actually oil, gas, and mining, the $6.5 billion, but $3.9 billion of that was from our side, from the mineral side, which is about 61% of the total. And according to estimates from the National Mining Association, the mining industry supports 43,500 jobs here in the state of Utah. And also there's a direct impact to state revenues from our industry. So we have about $40 million in combined severance tax from the extractive industries, $112 million in CIB contributions. So these are the portion of mineral royalties that go directly back to counties here in the state where extraction takes place, and then almost $42 million in SITLA royalties, which go directly into the school and institutional trust lands, trust funds that benefit school children and other beneficiaries around the state. Utah is ranked 7th nationally for non-fuel mineral production, 11th nationally for coal production, and importantly, the Fraser Institute every year does a survey of mining jurisdictions around the world, and Utah actually ranked 4th out of 76 global mining jurisdictions in the Fraser Institute's Policy Perception Index. So essentially, are the policies relating to the mining industry friendly to the point that people want to come and invest in your economy? So 4th out of 76 global destinations there. The only state that outranked us here in the U.S. is Alaska. One of the challenges we have in this state, and this is not unique to Utah, but we do have a sort of disconnect between urban and rural here in the state. So 80% of our population lives on the Wasatch Front, and most of our extraction takes place off of the Wasatch Front, with a few very notable exceptions like Rio Tinto, Kennecott, and we'll hear from them a little bit later this morning. But this does lead to a disconnect in policy sometimes, where people on the Wasatch Front don't understand what's needed to continue to have extraction off the Wasatch Front and the type of environment that we have to maintain in order for extraction to take place. A good example of this is a bill that we dealt with in the last legislative session. It was House Bill 283 that created what was called the Outdoor Adventure Commission. And this is a commission that was supposed to get together to map out a future for outdoor recreation in the state, map out a strategic plan. And outdoor recreation is a very important part of our economy here in the state, as you know. But part of the problem with this Outdoor Adventure Commission is that it didn't have some key stakeholders that were invited to be at the table. So the School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration originally wasn't represented. You didn't have a lot of rural representation. You didn't have representation from the agricultural community. And importantly, you didn't have representation from the extractive community. And we had to fight long and hard to get a seat at the table for this Outdoor Adventure Commission so that we could help to head off any future conflicts. And as we were going through this fight to get on the Outdoor Adventure, to get a seat on the Outdoor Adventure Commission, we were actually told at one point that the optics of having the extractive industry would be bad because we know that extraction and outdoor recreation can't coexist. And of course, for people in the industry and anyone, frankly, that lives in Utah, we know that that's not true. I think one of the best examples of this is one of our UMA members, our great UMA members, Intrepid Potash in Moab. The evaporation ponds at Intrepid are world famous. They're things that people actually will stop on various trails there to see. And Intrepid and the very vigorous outdoor recreation and tourism communities in Moab have coexisted peacefully for decades, expressly because Intrepid's always been at the table as things were being planned on a city and regional level, and we need to make sure that happens statewide. Another thing that I want to talk about is that sometimes when we have policymakers here in Salt Lake, again, they don't quite understand the realities of what's going on in rural Utah. One of our institutions of higher education, a policy institute there, put together what they call the Coal Country Strike Team, which essentially was going to go in and save Utah's coal country from itself. And part of the problem is that some of the policy prescriptions that they have just don't comport with the reality of what's going on in rural Utah, as we've been trying to point out. And I want to just give an example of this. One of the things that they talk about is the contraction of employment that we've seen over the last number of years in the mining industry in certain parts of the state. But the mining industry has generally grown over the last number of years. And to show this, I wanted to just show a quick chart here that talks about the changes in employment in Carbon County, which is one of the major coal-producing counties in the state of Utah. So last year in 2019, there were 149 new jobs in Carbon County, which may not seem like a lot, but as I'll show a little bit later, is a pretty major change for a county of that size. So 1.7% increase in employment in that county. And you can see from this chart that 78 of those 149 new jobs were in the mining industry. And if you look at some of the metrics that the state government, the Governor's Office of Economic Development used to sort of measure the relative value of a job in rural Utah versus the value of a job on the Wasatch Front, you can see that 78 new mining jobs in Carbon County would be roughly equivalent to about 2,800 jobs on the Wasatch Front. And so you can see, again, this is a major improvement in the employment situation in Carbon County. And more importantly, those jobs that are being created are incredibly valuable for Carbon County. So one of the things that this policy institute wants to do is to increase tourism infrastructure and to increase the amount of employment in the leisure and hospitality industry. But you can see here from the wage data that the average person working in the mining industry in Carbon County makes a little over $8,000 a month. And someone in the leisure and hospitality industry makes a hair over $1,000 a month. So 631% more you're making in the mining industry than the leisure and hospitality. If you go and look at the number of people that are employed in these sectors, you can see that there's actually not that many more people working in mining, only 19% more people working in mining than in leisure and hospitality. But then you look at the aggregate wages for those folks, and the people working in mining brought in 769% more money in aggregate than the folks that are working in leisure and hospitality. So the idea that you're going to replace natural resource jobs with tourism jobs is just, it's not correct. And quickly here, I'll just go through this quickly. These are the major employers in Carbon County. And if you look here, you can see these are all the ones of the top 25 employers in Carbon County that are involved in the mining industry. These are the folks that are involved in government and education. We have healthcare here and retail, and then you're left with one other non-mining or non-government or service sector job. So the wealth-creating industries in that county are all centered around the mining industry, and we've got to remember that. So I'll skip through these since we're a little bit behind schedule, except to say for this one that even here in the entire state, even once you get out of rural Utah, you can see that mining has the second highest average wages of any industry in our state, including the professional and business services. I just want to focus briefly on some of the things that the Mining Association has been doing in response to the COVID pandemic, and this is something that's obviously affected everyone, and especially folks in our industry. You can see here some of the various activities that we've been involved with. I just want to highlight before I wrap up two things in particular that the Mining Association was able to do on the legislative front that we're very proud of. The first was in the second special session that the legislature held in response to the COVID pandemic. We were able to get past Senate Bill 2004, which was called Regulatory Certainty Amendments. And essentially what this did is it put a pause on all regulatory activity for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, for the Division of Air Quality, Division of Water Quality. It paused rulemaking and paused fee increases with some necessary carve-outs for things that were required to maintain our federally delegated powers and some other carve-outs. But this allowed the industry to have some breathing room so that they could focus on keeping their operations up and running and making sure that their employees were continuing to stay employed and were staying healthy and not have to worry about new rulemakings and other things that could wait until we got into a better situation. And then also Senate Bill 2009, which created the Oil, Gas, and Mining Grant Program. And this was a $5 million program that was created using money that the state got from the CARES Act, the Federal CARES Act. And we were involved in the program design and implementation. And once that grant program went live, it was actually oversubscribed. All of the money was spoken for within 24 hours. And a number of our members and also members from the Petroleum Association and others were able to take advantage of this grant fund in order to allow them a little bit of flexibility and some financial support to deal with the effects of the COVID pandemic. So this is something that we're very proud of. I'm very grateful to represent this industry. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to take policymakers out to your places of business, out to your operations. Just to give one quick example, we'll have a new congressman in the first district here in Utah, and he's already been at the Simplot phosphate mine and the American Gilsonite mine before he was even elected, because we want to make sure that our new elected officials understand the importance of our industry and understand some of the things that they need to be focusing on a federal level, and also our state policymakers here on a state level, to ensure that we can continue to stay healthy and provide the opportunities that our industry does provide for our workers, and also is the beginning of the supply chain for the rest of the economy. So I want to now introduce, we're very honored today to have with us the Gregory Sopkin, who is the Region 8 Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency. And I'm just going to read a quick bio here. So Gregory Sopkin serves as the Regional Administrator for Region 8 of the EPA, and he spent much of his career working in public service and in private legal practice in Colorado, having worked for 12 years on energy, environment, and telecommunications matters prior to coming to the EPA, I'm sorry. We're very grateful to have Administrator Sopkin here, and that he's actually here live and in town and willing to talk to us. And one of the things that the Administrator has offered to do is actually to take some questions. And so we'd ask that all of you that are watching online, there's a chat feature on the YouTube stream, and if you can put any questions that you'd like to pose to the Administrator in that chat feature, we will pose them to here live, and he can answer your questions. So we'll turn it over to Administrator Sopkin.
Well, thank you, Brian. It is very good to be here today, working at the salt mine complex. I always thought working at salt mines would be dreadful, but it's really nice here. So the last time I was here, I was with Doug Benevento, who I think you all know is number 2 at EPA, and he was my predecessor at Region 8, so tough act to follow. We've been doing our best at Region 8. The last time I was here, I was with him, and we did a tour of the Kennecott mine by Rio Tinto, and I would note Josh Brown is here today, so thank you for being here. I was deeply impressed by that tour. I saw the water treatment, revegetation, and environmentally responsible operations associated with that mine. I also was honored to see the plans for Utah Lake. There's going to be dredging, building islands, removing invasive species, and much to come there. So Utah is looking at a great future here. I would also note that EPA has been working with the Inland Port Authority regarding air quality and other issues. So a couple things I'd like to mention. EPA recently created the Office of Mountains, Deserts, and Plains. It was announced September 2nd. It's going to be part of our Office of Land and Emergency Management. It's 5 to 10 employees that are going to be based in Lakewood, Colorado. The purpose of Office Mountain, Deserts, and Plains is to expedite the cleanup of abandoned uranium mines on the Navajo Nation and elsewhere, and streamlining procedures and processes for Good Samaritan cleanup efforts and cleanup projects at abandoned hard rock mining sites in the West. It's basically west of the Mississippi. It's also going to oversee and organize using the what's called the Environmental Lean Management System, or ELMS principles, and so we're going to try to expedite the processes for cleaning up these mines. We're also going to identify the most advanced technology solutions for historic mining sites in the West. Finally, it's going to serve as a central contact point for a number of alphabet soup federal agencies, states, tribes, and others who have responsibility or are impacted by hard rock mine land sites. It's unclear if that office would survive in a Biden presidency. I certainly think it's a worthwhile office. Another thing I'd like to mention is the president recently issued a memorandum on protecting jobs, economic opportunities, and national security for all Americans. It requires the Secretary of Energy to consult with several department heads, including the administrator of the EPA, to assess and report the domestic and economic impacts of undermining, hydraulic fracturing, and other technology. And I would note that other technology includes mining. And so what we are requesting, and that would be all the regions are requesting from industry players, including the mining industry, is information about the economic impacts of prohibiting or sharply restricting the use of hydraulic fracturing and other technologies, again, including mining, the trade impacts of prohibiting or sharply restricting mining, and I should advance here. The trade impacts of prohibiting or sharply restricting hydraulic fracturing and mining, and other domestic or economic impacts. So if you want to provide that information to EPA, please reach out to my Chief of Staff, Jagadeesan, to do so. The report is due from the EPA to the President within 30 days from the date of the end of November. And we will provide that information that we receive to headquarters, and they will provide that to the President. So, big issue out here in Utah, and the main reason we're out here is I'm going to be doing an event later this morning with the governor, Governor Herbert, and Scott Barrett of the Utah DEQ to recognize air quality improvements achieved in Utah. And the main two that I'm going to be talking about are PM10 and PM2.5. Specifically, EPA is proposing to formally change the Wasatch Front's Salt Lake City and Provo air quality status to attainment for PM2.5. Our proposal, which was signed at the end of last month, also includes approving the maintenance plan submitted by Utah for these areas to ensure continued attainment of the fine particulate standard. So we are now in the 30-day comment period regarding that. This was published, the proposal to approve PM2.5 attainment was published last Friday, and we're in the 30-day comment period. It will end on December 7. And so we invite stakeholders, that would include the mining industry and other stakeholders, to submit comments about that proposal. After the comment period concludes, we will review all comments and issue a final decision. Just the history of this: in September of 2019, EPA formally determined that the two serious PM2.5 non-attainment areas, that's Provo and Salt Lake City, had met the fine particulate standard for 3 years running, and average concentrations of the fine particulate had been reduced to 30 micrograms per cubic meter. That's a 37% reduction since 2009. Prior to that determination, in October of 28, EPA determined that the third PM2.5 non-attainment area, Logan, attained the standard in 2017. Also, just as a side note, in February of 2020, EPA finalized the redesignation of 3 PM10 non-attainment areas along the Wasatch Front back to attainment. And these were Salt Lake County, Utah County, and Ogden City. So it's a success story that Utah is cleaning up its air, as evidenced by the attainment of PM2.5 and the proposal for attainment of PM2.5. I would also note that EPA recently approved Utah's Regional Haze State Implementation Plan for the Hunter and Huntington generation plants. So what does this show, these air quality improvements show with regard to the mining industry? Well, there are several mines, including Kennecott, that were in the non-attainment areas, but yet these areas were able to attain. And clean air and mining are not mutually exclusive. So one challenging issue we have is ozone. On August 3rd, 2018, 3 areas in Utah were designated non-attainment for the 2015 NAAQS at the marginal classification. Those are Northern Wasatch, Southern Wasatch, and the Uintah Basin. The current preliminary design value, which is based on the average of readings taken in 2018, 2019, and 2020, although the 2020 data is uncertified, shows that the Southern Wasatch area, that's Weber, Tooele, Salt Lake, and Davis counties, is attaining, the Southern Wasatch area, which is partial Utah County, is attaining, but the Northern Wasatch area, which is partial Weber, Tooele counties, Salt Lake, and Davis counties, are not attaining. Uintah Basin is also not attaining, but I would hasten to mention that the impacts of the 2020 wildfire smoke still needs to be reviewed with regard to that 2020 data. What does it mean if an area fails to attain the 15 ozone NAAQS standard by the August 2021 deadline for that? The area will be reclassified from marginal to moderate, and this would trigger additional Clean Air Act requirements. And this chart shows sort of the consequences of going from marginal to moderate. Again, requires implementation of a reasonably achievable control technology, also called RACT, 15% reduction of VOCs or nitrogen over 6 years. The offset ratio goes from 1.1 to 1 to 1.15 to 1, and there are other consequences as well. The major source threshold remains, however, at 100 tons per year. Hold on. Also wanted to mention the 179B option. EPA issued 179B draft guidance for non-attainment areas impacted by international emissions. That gives states the options to show an area would be able to attain or would have attained, but for emissions emanating from outside the U.S. The draft guidance describes recommended types of technical analyses for air agencies to include in the demonstrations. So the guidance was made for public review back in January 2020 for 60 days. However, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, determined that the draft guidance is significant, and so it was submitted to OMB in late August for their review, and there it continues to sit. We've been working with the Utah Division of Air Quality staff on international modeling issues associated with the 179B possibility of a petition. Success story, American Gilsonite Company. So through the late spring and summer of 2020, we worked with American Gilsonite on their self-audit. And there were Clean Air Act compliant concerns that arose as a result for 2 of their facilities at the UNO Indian Reservation. So the good news was, working with Region 8 staff, we subsequently determined that the company could apply for a tribal minor new source review permit, and that minor source permit was issued to Cottonwood on November 3rd of this month. Also, the other facility, Bonanza Mine, we determined that a Title V permit was not needed. So both facilities now have the appropriate permits. Mentioned real quick, we promulgated the Navigable Water Protection Rule back in June of this year. We are working with a number of federal agencies, including the Army Corps of Engineers, to develop a series of trainings and several joint memorandum to facilitate implementation of the rule. So I would certainly advise participating in those. The rule was challenged in the Northern District of California by a number of states. I think it was 17, and the Northern District of California ruled in our favor, so the rule's effective in those challenging states. The only exception is there was a separate lawsuit brought in Colorado, which prevailed, and so that so the new WOTUS rule is stayed in the state of Colorado. That goes to oral argument before the 10th Circuit next week. So we'll see what happens with that. Also mentioned the Clean Water Act Section 401 rule. It's a new rule that modernizes the agency's water quality certification regulations for discharges into waters of the United States. We completed the new rule in June of 2020. I'm sorry, we finalized it, and then the rule became final on September 11 of 2020. Essentially what it does is that it establishes clear actions and timeframes for the project proponent and the certifying agency to follow. Among other things, these certifications must be related to water quality, a bold concept, and they have to be completed within a reasonable time, which is defined as less than equal to a year or whatever a reasonable time is, but no later than 1 year. And the scope is limited to water quality requirements, and it promotes technical assistance, which EPA provides, and early engagement processes for these certifications. Finally, I'd like to mention the Water Reuse Action Plan, which was finalized in February of 2020. This is going to improve water security, sustainability, meet future water quality needs. This is an issue of high importance, of course, to the state of Utah, as well as the states of Colorado and Wyoming in Region 8. If you haven't gotten involved, I'd encourage you to get involved. There's some great ideas floating around about potential reuse of water for industry, as well as produced water, stormwater, municipal wastewater, and agriculture. And these are the strategic themes of the Water Reuse Action Plan. And we have an online platform as well, which is the repository for all actions, and it captures milestones and progress. I'd encourage you to check it out. So that's what's going on at EPA. Happy to take questions. At this point, I'm going to invite my very learned Chief of Staff, Jagadisan Sithuraman, if the questions are too difficult.
How are you doing? I'm Kevin Anderson, the current chair of the Utah Mining Association. I was wondering if you could speak for a moment on some of the changes you anticipate with the still potential change, but let's say anticipate a change in administration. There's been some regulatory changes that you've mentioned. I'm interested in whether, the streamlining of NEPA is going to continue, the definition of the waters of the United States, some of those issues that there have been some, I think, significant changes. Do you see any reverting back?
Well, I'm going to be very careful here because I can't really talk about elections and sort of consequences of elections. What I would encourage you to do is look at the status of these various rules that you're talking about. Some of them have been finalized, and of course there are going to be court actions. Everything that EPA does is challenged in court at some point, and we'll see where that goes. But many of the rules have been through the process to final rule stage, including publication in the Federal Register, which kicks off the legal challenge aspect of it, and then it's going to depend on the legal challenge. Beyond that, I can't really comment.
Mr. Chair, we've got a question from one of our viewers online, from Gordon Sobering, and he asks, is in situ leaching of minerals included under the umbrella of hydraulic fracturing by the EPA?
Can't tell at this point, but we would love to hear your thoughts on it, and we'll be happy to discuss this. This came out only a couple of days ago, maybe 3 or 4 days ago. So we are trying to figure out what is expected of us from this. So if you have any thoughts and if you want us to look at it, we'll be happy to.
Yeah, we could take a look at that specific issue and see if there's an answer on that. It may be too specific of a question. I know it's the definition of other industries includes mining, and so it might be surprising if it gets into that level of detail, and then it simply becomes a question of sort of legislative or rule intent. But we'll take a look at that and see if we can find an answer on that.
First, Administrator Sopkin, thank you so much for being here today. Josh Brown, Rio Tinto. As we go through the next phase with ozone, curious if you have recommendations, guidance, your thoughts as we have the anthropogenic as well as the natural cause. It's a challenge in the West, and I think we're still scratching our heads a lot. Just any advice that you could give would be much appreciated.
Yeah, it is a challenge. It's a challenge in Colorado. It's a challenge in Utah, and it has a lot to do with the topography and just being located next to mountains. And when you look at the evidence we have, there certainly is a contribution coming from international sources. And then the question becomes, well, how much of the contribution is actually from industry, how much is from mobile sources, and you break that down. And if only one industry is sort of targeted to deal with that, that smacks of unfairness. I think the purpose of the rule is if you do have good evidence that the amount of international contribution puts you over into non-attainment, then 179B should be granted. The whole question becomes, what is the quality of that data that you present? And this is something, my advice is to work very closely with my staff, the Region 8 staff, regarding that. You're certainly free to talk to the RA, to the Chief of Staff as well, to talk about your concerns with that. And these can be discussed with our Division of Air at headquarters as well. My advice is to be actively engaged and to put together the best possible product you can, because this is all a science-based determination of what you can show. And if you can make a good demonstration to the people who are in the weeds on that stuff, that's Region 8 staff, that's staff at headquarters, then in my view, it certainly should be considered. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so one thing to keep in mind is we have a ambient air quality standard, and we have to attain the standard at some point, right? So, the question is how much of the contribution from international, pollution that is getting transported into this area really contributes to the ozone levels here. And that is the challenge. And to complicate the issue, the terrain doesn't help. The terrain and meteorology doesn't help. So like the administrator said, it's important to understand the science. And, by all means, you don't have to take, if EPA says something, you don't have to challenge them, but do it through science. This is the evidence from science. We don't agree with you. And then, let us come to some kind of consensus. So.
That's the last question? Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. Thank you.
Thanks to Administrator Sopkin for that presentation and also for answering some questions. We appreciate him being here. I now want to introduce Gaby Poirier, who is the Managing Director of Rio Tinto Kennecott, which is our largest mining operation here in the state. Gaby joined Rio Tinto, Gaby joined Rio Tinto in earlier this year as Managing Director. Prior to that, he served with the Pilbara Mine Iron Ore Team as the General Manager for the Greater Hope Downs and the Rio Tinto General Manager responsible for the Busselton region. And during his 18 years with Rio Tinto, he's worked at multiple sites in Canada, the US, Europe, and Australia. Gaby's a safety-focused and business-oriented leader who thrives for developing strong teams and truly believes that people are a business's greatest asset. So we're grateful for Gaby being here and look forward to your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. It's all loaded on there, so you just advance this. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. So thanks for the warm welcome. Thanks for inviting me to speak today. I'm Gaby Poirier, Managing Director for Rio Tinto Kennecott, and today I will share mainly 4 key topics. First one, some of the steps we're taking to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Some highlights on the newest, also UMA chairman of the board, our very own Matt Toby, that I believe is online. Review our response and finding from the earthquake that we had in March, and also share with you our various concurrent reclamation projects. So first, it's a challenge for everyone, and I mean, as you probably know, we at Rio Tinto, it's part of our culture to always do a safety share. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about COVID-19 related shares. So at Kennecott, our focus is always on the safety and well-being of our people, communities, and our operations. COVID-19 cases continue to increase throughout Utah, as we all know. And we have built our Triggered Action Response Plan, what we call TARP, levels since March to address the constantly changing situation. Our current TARP level now matches most of the control expectation in the community, such as the gatherings of no greater than 10 people, stay at home when you're sick, this is required, follow public health guidance in quarantines and isolation. We have also a multi-layered approach, which includes health questionnaires, support managing symptoms, travel, close contact, and quarantine protocols, physical distancing, including work from home, obviously, lots of virtual, like we do today, meeting, obviously. We have also red and blue team rosters, so to make sure that we don't cross-contaminate within leaderships. Hygiene practice, as we all know, cleaning, hand washing, sanitizer, temperature screening every day, everyone. Face covering, required also across sites since May. And we have also a testing program, PCR, so all employees and contractors are tested monthly. We're moving to every 2 weeks right now with the PCR point of care testing to make sure that we have the right level of controls with considering the increase that we have in the community. We have also technology for proximity detection, testing type improvements, and CRM and data-driven focus on control compliance, because we can have all these controls, but if we don't follow them, they won't be effective. So many things, and as we encourage all our employees is to make sure that we are brilliant at the basics on these controls, both at work and at home. Starting with an introduction to Rio Tinto Kennecott, so many of you on the line know very well our operation. So as you know, we're a fully integrated supply chain operation from mine to market, with a mine, a concentrator, smelter, a refinery, and also tailing facilities. The Bingham Canyon mine has been operating in Utah for over 118 years, quite an impressive legacy, and is a fixture of Utah's history and visual piece of the Salt Lake Valley. We are committed community partner and look forward the future of Utah and being part of helping the economy to grow, supplying good paying careers and helping our neighbors to grow. Also, I mean, we're quite proud to supply quality copper domestically for the US market and manufacturing. So next, I would like to take some moment to welcome the incoming chairman, Mr. Matt Toby, which is online. So Matt is the general manager of our minerals group at Kennecott, and he will be serving as the next UMA chairman of the board. So Matt has a clear passion for the mining industry and has extensive experience ranging from operations, planning, and technical roles. Matt is wonderful to work with, and I know he will do an excellent job representing Rio Tinto Kennecott through this prestigious position. So we value the Utah Mining Association a lot. Kennecott has been involved since its inception, and we are proud to have another Rio Tinto member join the rank of chairing the association. So thank you, congratulations, Matt. Now moving to some of the information we wanted to share. So first, I mean, everyone heard and felt, obviously, the earthquake we had on March 18 this year. So a few things we wanted to share there. So you got a picture here on the screen about the epicenter. So the epicenter was in Magna, as you know well, about 5.7 in terms of level. So first thing to share is that definitely our tailing and embankment, historic and active, perform exactly as designed during this 5.7 magnitude earthquake in March, with no major issues. We had also over 2,000 aftershocks since the initial epicenter, so obviously all the facilities been quite tested. Both north and south impoundments perform extremely well and as modeled. Minor cracks were observed, no repairs necessary. Pore pressures initially spiked and have since dissipated. INSAR data capture small movement as a result of the earthquake and subsequent aftershocks. Minor subsurface movement was captured by our inclinometers, which have since stabilized. And the current tailing operations is designed, this is one of the things that when we had the earthquake, we know that our current tailings operations are designed to survive, to withstand a 1 in 5,000 years event, which was quite performed exactly as modeled, like discussed. So lots of learning, but definitely few things that we learned is that we took many actions for the tailings, and mainly on three folds: dewatering, unweighting, and reseeding, and all these actions were quite successful. So just to name some of them, in terms of dewatering, Kennecott first installed approximately 46 dewatering wells, as well as 1,500 wick drains on or near the top of the southeast corner of the tailings impoundment in the 1990s. Between 2016 and 2018, we installed an additional 100 plus dewatering wells on the lower slope of the impoundment, which became operational in February 2019. Our plan is to pump these wells until closure, at which time we can eliminate the canal and build a berm to stabilize the slope. So dewatering action, again, quite efficient. In terms of unweighting, the second phase was to unweight the far corner of the impoundment, where dewatering was deemed ineffective. We removed a little under 1 million cubic yards of material as of May this year. So lots of work that happened in that zone. In terms of reseeding, since we were disturbing land that was previously vegetated, we added a number of dust control activities to limit any impacts. This included water trucks, spraying water on roads, polymer to bind the soil on the disturbed slope, followed by hydroseeding. Grass has already begun to sprout, so again, quite effective. So overall, in terms of the tailing stabilization projects, all the action that were taken performed exactly as modeled and were quite effective, and we'll continue to work on this part of our asset to ensure proper operation and safety. The other part I wanted to share with you today is all the concurrent reclamations projects that we have. So you can see on the slide, our philosophy have been over the years that as facility cease operation, we engage in concurrent reclamation to reduce the liability associated with the permits in a timely manner. Kennecott, State of Utah, and EPA were pioneers developing the Superfund alternative approach on Kennecott properties. And that methodology has been adapted as a template for cleanup at hundreds of other sites, and we're quite proud of it. Kennecott strives to reduce the environmental impacts, risk, and liabilities associated with its Duggan permit for the Bingham Canyon pit by practicing timely progressive rehabilitation and holistic mine planning. This slide depicts a number of key rehabilitation and closure projects that have been completed since Rio Tinto purchased the Bingham Canyon mine in 1989. And you can see there's quite a long history here. Today, there's two of these initiatives I would like to put a little bit more emphasis. The first one is South and East Waste Rock. So, through diligence, hard work, and our upcoming UMA chairman, UMA chairman Matt, that is coming, Kennecott has been able to undertake a concurrent reclamation of our South and East Waste Rock overburden piles. This work not only helps restore the view shed of our overburden piles, we've been able to undertake the work cost effectively, so a win-win. Helping restore the view shed for the valley's resident and reducing costs for the business, so definitely quite a good achievement. This project was initiated engineering design in 2012 for grading and haulage, planned to regrade initial lift. We maintained growth media stockpile and drainage, which was regraded and seeded in the spring of fall 2016, totaling approximately 362 acres, so quite a piece of land. In 2016, approximately 93 million tons of waste rock were placed at that base of these waste rock. repository as part of construction of the structure. So $140 million total spent as of September 2020 this year on south and east waste rock reclamation. So quite proud of all the effort there and progressing well. And this is how you can see it today. The other one that we're quite proud of, wanted to highlight, is obviously Daybreak. So the Daybreak development, which Rio Tinto sold in 2016, is an example of how successful remediation efforts on land previously used for mining purposes can lead to new beneficial use. So you've got a picture here, the before and after 2003 and 2009. The area where Daybreak is located today, and also where our office is also, was once a location of several evaporation ponds, originally constructed in 1936 to store and evaporate mine water originating from the Bingham Canyon watershed. Use of these ponds were discontinued in 1987. In the mid-90s, and in cooperation with EPA and the state of Utah, Rio Tinto conducted a cleanup of the ponds to industrial levels. Then, in the early 2000s, Rio Tinto decided it wanted to develop the site of the former evaporation ponds with a mixed-use development and conducted additional cleanup activities to facilitate unrestricted use of the property. EPA and UDEC signed off on the use of this site for residential purpose in 2007, and the rest is history. 14 years after the first houses were built, the Daybreak community is proof of a sound, sustainable, vision-integrated with innovative mine land remediation. Daybreak is a terrific example of mining full circle, and we're proud of it. It's one of Utah's most sought-after residential locations and serves as a model for many communities across the United States when looking to develop walkable communities, open space, and appropriate density for future population growth. So quite a good project. On that note, I will just say again, thank you. Thanks for the invite for speaking today. I hope you're going to have a great meeting and great discussion today. I will look forward to our continued partnership with UMA. And again, it's been a privilege to be invited here today. So thank you. Have a nice day.
And I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker. Mike Nasi is a partner with the Jackson Walker law firm where he practices environmental and energy law. Mike is counsel for ongoing parties with various regulatory proceedings relating to carbon monoxide, interstate air quality, regional haze, coal combustion residuals, and other issues, including appeals pending before the United States Court of Appeals for the 5th, 8th, 10th, and DC circuits, as well as the Supreme Court. And Mike helps to coordinate multi-state outreach efforts regarding these and other regulatory impacts regarding the electric power sector, mining sector, appears at hearings and energy policy events across the country, and is published in several trade law and business journals on environmental law and energy policy topics. So thank you, Mike, for being here. We look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Well, I'm going to be part of the breakout session, so I'm going to actually try to catch us up on some time here and abbreviate this presentation. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Love the state of Utah. It's great to have been getting the opportunity to be here in person. Even got some snow while I was here. I might even take credit for bringing a lot of moisture from Texas anyway. So what I'm going to do is jump right into a quick update and overview of an education campaign that I'm heavily involved with. I actually helped set up and hire up the team, and I serve as a senior advisor still. So I'm going to jump through these slides. Don't get worried. We'll be covering some of this on a breakout session. If you're interested in getting a market update, please attend that session. I'm going to do a little bit deeper dive. So I'm going to go right to the heart of the education campaign. And the first thing I'll say is that as a practicing environmental regulatory lawyer and following up on the administrator, this is perfect timing. So I think the theme is very consistent with what you've heard already this morning. What you see out in the public in our school systems is just a significant underappreciation of the amazing example that the United States has set on environmental regulatory achievement, and thanks to the members of your organization and members of industry in partnership with state and federal governments. That has been quite a success, but it's not well appreciated, and that is quite a frustration because it actually has policy implications. If the public is not aware that we've made improvements and that our regulatory construct and approach is an example and a model for the rest of the world, then they tend to believe we need to make some drastic change, and that is not healthy for either our society, our republic, or the environment. So a couple of really basic facts that are the polling shows are massively underappreciated. As a practicing attorney, what I see is what used to be a kind of a thought process that people don't understand environmental regulations, they just don't understand what's going on. That's bubbling up into actual reviewing courts, where we have Court of Appeals justices that came up in an education system that frankly did not prepare them to understand basic facts about energy or the environment. And so this is a classic slide. It's small and you probably can't make it out, but basically this is every major pollutant that we know hurts people in the environment in terms of air quality, and how it has all been dramatically reduced over a period since 1990 and before, when we started to implement environmental regulatory reforms. And note, I color-coded it blue and red because this is a bipartisan thing. It happens during both administrations. We see deep cuts in every situation because what we do is we fix environmental issues with technology, not politics or ideology. And yet this slide, if you look at polling about the appreciation of the American people about how much we've achieved and how we compare to other parts of the country, it's like nobody's ever seen this story, and that's why I call it the best environmental story never told. And this global perspective is even more important because if you look at PM 2.5, the pollutant that I believe most public health officials kills more people prematurely in the world than any other, the United States is a model achiever. It is literally the cleanest modern global trading partner of anyone in the world. We're cleaner than our allies. We're certainly 6 to 8 times cleaner than our global trade competitors. So that is a story, again, not appreciated. And why is it so important? Because there is such a thing as clean enough. And I actually don't even use the clean word, even though the Clean Air Act uses that word, because the only science-based way to protect human health from air pollution, for example, is to understand what's safe. It's a toxicological principle, right? If I throw down a whole bunch of aspirin, I could be in trouble. But if I take a little bit, I could be greatly benefited. The same goes with air quality. I won't say that the pollutants in the air benefit human health, but at some level, they're toxicologically not harmful. And that is something that is just absent from the way that environmental regulations are currently debated. You see these reports over and over. American Lung Association constantly does it, where they predict premature deaths if we don't do an additional regulation to bring down the level of air pollution. But as the administrator talked about, as we see in environmental regulation all the time, EPA's job is to identify what the ambient level of air quality needs to be safe, plus a margin of safety. And it is statistically and scientifically, toxicologically not supportable to say that you continue to see benefits when you keep driving down air quality, ambient air quality levels lower. So that is the problem. So you see both an underappreciation of what we've done, and then we see a misleading set of facts about what we could do if we just shut down all industry, right? And so that's an important part. And so we at this organization called Life Powered have been just trying to raise up this positive story and to try to better equip people of all ages, including our judges ultimately, about this set of facts. And so there is a whole series of videos that Life Powered has put out. And what I'm going to do is attempt this morning, if things go smoothly, to show one of those videos. I'm going to pop through. There's a lot of stuff in this deck that I'll talk about during the breakout that gets into more of the granular details. But I think Brian wanted to make sure I introduced you to this education campaign, because this is a resource that is made for everyone to access, whether they be in education or in the industry just trying to help people better understand things, or even regulators. I mean, the story of the video I'm going to provide here is a perfect addition to what the administrator talked about in terms of the successes of EPA. So here is the series of what we call the Energy 101 series. There's a lot of different video resources at lifepower.org. Go there, please use that. Join the social media campaigns. We have a whole series of animated basic education about energy, and it builds upon itself. The story continues, but it's broken down into segments that are actually, achievable in terms of what people will listen to on a YouTube channel or watch on a YouTube channel. So nothing's more than, say, 3 minutes, and a lot of them are even shorter. So I'm going to jump to the end of this series because it is so topical to what is going on here in Salt Lake and in Utah and to the West in general, and to what EPA talks about all the time, which is the proven regulatory model. So I'm just going to click on the link and see if we can get lucky here. I'm going to pause it so I can maximize the screen. I don't know if this is happening on the other screen. Hopefully it is. See how high-tech we are. And I hope the organizers will adjust the video. And so this is a video. This is the 6th in a series. So there's been a whole series of basic education that led to this. And I'll show another one during the breakout or two. But I wanted to kind of go to this bottom line environmental story because it's such a great one.
What's made the air we breathe safe while energy and economic needs have grown? Let's look at how environmental science and technology made it all happen. Decades ago, studies revealed that our air was becoming unsafe. Pollution from factories and power plants rose steeply while trying to meet the needs of our growing population. Air pollutants like particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides cause dense amounts of smog and acid rain. Starting in the 1960s and 70s, the United States developed pollution control technologies for a wide range of sources, including power plants, and passed laws to set air quality standards. The result? We were able to grow our economy with cheap and reliable electricity sources like coal and natural gas, while at the same time reduce pollution levels so dramatically that the vast majority of our country's air is now among the safest in the world. With our power plants and factories now much cleaner, only a few areas in our country still struggle with air quality. These spots are stuck with pollution generated outside of the United States. Southern California, for example, receives significant pollution from nations thousands of miles away. The pollution is carried by air currents across the ocean and deposited in the United States. U.S. manufacturers spend significant time and resources protecting human health and the environment. Most of these polluting countries have weak environmental and labor standards, leading to unfair trade advantages. The end result? We export jobs and import pollution. This unstable dynamic could become much worse if domestic policies increase the price of energy in our manufacturing sector. The good news is that American air is already safe, and we can export our pollution control technology and cleaner fuels, such as low-sulfur coal and oil and clean-burning natural gas. America's energy and technology exports will help developing nations move millions of their citizens out of energy poverty and grow their economies dramatically. Our environmental achievements over the past 50 years serve as a model to the world as we strive to keep our air safe, while energy use expands to power our ever more interconnected lives.
Well, that is just an example, and you're probably wondering, wow, that seems to look a lot like a video game my son or daughter might play. That's intentional. This is called representational animation. These are gamification animators that we've retained to actually be able to communicate with children of all ages, frankly. And so I hope you'll use that resource. Like I said during the breakout, I'll talk about a few other issues and a few other videos that try to get into a better understanding of the electric grid and power policy generally. So I'm going to hand it back to Brian. Thank you for the attention this morning. We'll get back on track and watch some special appearances here. So thank you.
So I want to thank Administrator Sopkin and Gaby and Mike for their presentations. Appreciate their being here. Now we have the opportunity to hear from two people that don't really need any introduction, but we've got recorded videos from Mike Lee, who is the senior senator here from the state of Utah, also serves on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate, and on other committees that are pertinent to our industry. We're grateful that he was willing to do a video message for us. And then also from Kate MacGregor, who is the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Interior, someone that has long roots in the industry and also here in Utah, having worked for Ranking Member Bishop and with other members of our Utah delegation. Before we get to that, I wanted to acknowledge the sponsor of this session, which is Bar Engineering. Bar has been a longtime member of the Utah Mining Association, and we're grateful for their sponsorship. And we've actually got a short video message from Bar, and then we'll move into the message from Senator Lee and then from Deputy Secretary MacGregor.
Greetings, I'm John Geffert with Bar Engineering. We are pleased to sponsor this keynote session and extend a virtual welcome to the keynote speakers as well as UMA members who have become my friends after decades of involvement with this association. We'd also like to show our appreciation to the Utah Safety Council for awarding Bar's Salt Lake City office with its 2020 Award of Merit of Honor in recognition of maintaining an incident rate lower than the industry average, continuous improvement, and sustaining levels of excellence. At Bar, as with all mining companies, safety comes first. Bar is an employee-owned firm that integrates engineering and environmental services from 10 offices in 6 states and 1 province. Over 850 engineers and professionals work throughout the U.S., Canada, and internationally to solve clients' problems as if they were our own. Our focus in the Intermountain West region is in Salt Lake City, Denver, Bismarck offices with support from Hibbing and Minneapolis-St. Paul. Bar has a full suite of engineering, environmental, and regulatory expertise to assist clients on large, complex projects for which we provide everything from initial regulatory permitting and siting assistance to process and facility design and construction management, operations support, and closure planning. Bar can help at every phase in the life cycle of a project: greenfields, brownfields, startups, operations, expansions, retrofits, through reclamation and closure. Bar also offers M&A due diligence services, resource estimations under the Canadian NI 43101 and the new SEC SK 1300 formats. Our professional engineers and geologists are licensed in multiple states and have expertise in structural, mechanical, heavy civil, mining, geotechnical, and mineral processing engineering, along with environmental support for air, water, and land issues. We also offer a full spectrum of electrical engineering support from small electrical designs as part of a new or existing system through large substation designs, transmission and distribution lines, alternative renewable energy systems, and tie-ins. We hope you can see Bar is a one-stop shop for all things mining in the Intermountain West region. I hope your virtual experience during this conference is a great one. Thank you.
Good morning. Though I wish I could be with you in person, it's a pleasure to address you by way of video today for the Utah Mining Association's annual convention. The work that all of you do in the extraction industry is essential not only to Utah, but to our country as a whole. Nearly everything we use to make the modern world run, from our technology to our transportation to the very buildings in which we live and work, all these things depend on minerals and metals that are mined, many of which are found in Utah. I'm proud that our lands in Utah boast such a wealth of these resources, and that our state is such a robust developer and steward of them. In my work in the Senate, I aim to do everything in my power to keep the industry strong while promoting responsible use of our lands and resources. And I've been engaged in several efforts to help do just that. I believe we ought to give as much control as possible to the people who live, work, and recreate on the lands. They understand their lands best and are often in the best position to manage them and manage them well. In fact, Utah has a strong track record of responsibly managing our state and public lands. That is exactly why I'm working on legislation that would allow states to petition for certain federal lands to be transferred to state control. And that's why I'm doing everything in my power to oppose restrictive land designations in Utah that strengthen the federal government's stranglehold on our lands, often, nearly always, to the detriment of the economy and to the people who live and depend on those lands and to the lands themselves. It's also why I've been working to reform the Land and Water Conservation Fund. While the fund was originally intended to promote and preserve recreation opportunities on public lands, unfortunately, it's drifted far from its original intent, and it's been rife with abuse. Over the last 3 years, the LWCF has instead been used primarily for buying more land rather than managing the land the federal government already owns. So to try to fix this, I've offered amendments that would ensure the federal government does not buy any new land until it has fully funded existing land management needs. I've also sponsored legislation to reform the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA as it's commonly known. Few U.S. laws have had a greater impact on federal public lands and infrastructure-related projects than this one. Enacted back in 1970 to make sure that agencies were analyzing the environmental consequences of proposed projects. It has, over time, evolved into an increasingly complex, heavily bureaucratic process that has dramatically increased the cost and the length of time needed to complete projects. To relieve federal agencies, federal, state, and local governments, and project sponsors of much of this expensive, unnecessary red tape, I've introduced a series of bills to reform the NEPA regulatory process. My proposed policies would ensure that we can efficiently and responsibly identify major environmental impacts, while also allowing agencies and sponsors the certainty and flexibility they need to complete their projects in a more timely and cost-effective manner. As we face the current pandemic, Americans' energy producers are not immune from challenges to their industry. In fact, they are facing unprecedented challenges, putting thousands of jobs as well as our energy sources at risk. For this reason, I joined several of my colleagues to send a letter to the Secretary of the Interior requesting that he reduce, delay, or suspend the federal royalty payments for oil, gas, and coal to the U.S. Treasury. If we can provide this relief now, we can ensure that America will continue production, essential industry jobs are preserved, and that taxpayers will receive a fair and honest return from the federal lands in the future. So now, as we look to the future landscape, we will undoubtedly face more challenges that remain ahead of us. As I continue my work in the Senate, I'll keep doing all that I can possibly do to empower Utahns to responsibly use and develop our lands and our resources. I have great faith that you all are up to the right challenge, and I look forward to seeing how your work continues helping our state and our country to thrive.
Thank you for inviting me to speak at the Utah Mining Association's 105th Annual Convention. For a long time, anti-business policies and the tangle of government regulation have closed down factories, shuttered entire industries, and penalized our nation's industrial workforce, including those in the mining sector. The people of Utah know this and have witnessed it firsthand. 2 weeks ago, I visited another state with a long and proud legacy of mineral production, my home state of Pennsylvania. There, in a small town called South Fork, I stood on land where coal had been mined since the 1860s. Coal that had fired and fueled the growth of this great nation and built the military might we needed to win 2 world wars. The site I stood on was mined long before our modern environmental laws, far and away a different process than we use today in modern mines, like those I've visited in Utah. At that site in Pennsylvania, we announced that that abandoned mine site had been completely restored and transformed using the same innovative reclamation techniques that modern mining operations use today in the United States. Now, the site of that legacy mine is a new recreational trail, showing that we can restore the beauty and splendor of the land long after an energy or mineral project concludes. After all, we are a nation of innovators, and our understanding of conservation of resources includes both responsible development and eventual reclamation. Some may argue that energy and minerals development should be regulated out of existence, only to let other countries produce the energy, minerals, and other products that we have come to rely upon for everyday life. In fact, nothing would make our nation's competitors more excited. But this administration does not believe in an America that defeats itself. President Trump believes American jobs can and should stay in America. He believes that American businesses can compete with the rest of the world and win. And he believes in an America that works together to grow small business and create more jobs, especially in rural America. That is why at the Department of the Interior, we have reformed our NEPA process to ensure full environmental review without waiting years for a yes or no answer. We have worked alongside our state and local partners to smartly update our regulations to reduce duplication and ensure that our regulatory framework is well within the 4 corners of the law. And we have made access to working lands a priority, given that the energy and minerals on the federal estate belong to the American people. But one of our greatest priorities in this administration has been the mining of critical minerals. The United States used to be the leader in mineral production and processing. Today, countries like China now dominate the critical mineral market. We have the mining technology, we have the expertise in our workforce, and we have the critical minerals right here in the United States. Utah alone has access to 28 of the 35 minerals identified as critical minerals in the most recent list published by the United States Geological Survey. From solar panels, electric vehicles, smartphones, medical devices, and military equipment, so much of our economy relies upon critical minerals. Previous administrations have stood by and watched as our dependence on foreign resources has grown. We have seen it with rare earths. We have seen it with cobalt, which is often found as a byproduct of copper mining. That is why President Trump declared a national emergency in September of this year. We must reduce unnecessary permitting delays and increase access to critical minerals so our country and our workers can be secure. Mining is a foundational industry in Utah, and the Beehive State is crucial to protecting the American people from the whims of foreign powers. Your state and your people are the ones who are powering our nation and the great American comeback. Every mine we support, every critical mineral we source domestically, and every energy record we break strengthens the country we all love so dearly. So, on behalf of the Department of the Interior, I would like to applaud all of those working in the mining industry for your grit and your determination, and for your work to put our nation on a more self-reliant path. Thank you so much, and God bless.
We appreciate, again, Senator Lee and Deputy Secretary MacGregor for their being willing to record messages for our audience here today. We are going to take a quick break before our technical sessions start. Before we adjourn this session, though, I wanted to again thank our session sponsor, Bar Engineering, for their generous support. I also want to acknowledge the Utah Mining Association's annual sponsors. These are the major sponsors that really help to provide the kind of support that we need to do what we do in the association. I just want to acknowledge them quickly. Our 2020 Platinum sponsors, Komatsu North America and Wheeler Machinery. Our Gold sponsor, Wolverine Fuels. Our Silver sponsors, Ames Construction, Brahma Group, and Graymont. And our bronze sponsors, ICM, Materion, Simplot, SciTech, Stantec, Smith Power Products, Red Leaf Resources, Rio Tinto Kennecott, and the Governor's Office of Energy Development. Again, grateful, very, very grateful for their support.